we don't expand our imagination,
justification for being what you are.
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Jan Crawford. With just 5 days to go until Election Day, the latest New York Times CBS News poll has more unsettling news for Democrats. Joining us today to discuss his page one piece is Jim Rutenberg from the New York Times. We'll then go to the spokesman for the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee, Doug Heye and Heye Sevugan, for more analysis. Wait, Sevugan, I think. Sorry about that, Heye. And finally, some insider info from Politico's Kiki on Mr. Stewart going to Washington. But first, Jim Rutenberg from the New York Times. Jim, your piece today was typically terrific, but it seems like the takeaway from this latest poll is that the Obama coalition is just kind of falling apart. Where are the Republicans picking up ground?
Well, to us, the most striking two sort of subsets were women and then Catholics. And but, you know, then it goes on and on. I mean, people with college educations or income kind of groups that have shifted over or are shifting over. It's very interesting.
So these were all groups that were with Obama just 2 years ago and with congressional Democrats. I mean, what does that say to you when you're looking at some of these numbers from the poll?
I don't know, you know, well, there's the dissatisfaction with the direction of the country is really large. The dissatisfaction with Congress is huge. It's near record levels for the history of our joint poll, CBS and us. So I think part of it's just obviously the economic drag, but the women numbers to me are particularly hard to figure out.
Well, that was what, I mean, that to me, when we're talking about what's quite dramatic and new in this poll, you said in your piece that in September, women were favoring Democrats by 7 points. Now with this most recent polling, I think it's 4 points the other way. I mean, is that, did I read that right?
Yeah, it's a big swing. It's within margin of error, but still, you know, there is, at least on paper, there's a gain by Republicans, and there's really a huge swing. So at worst, for Republicans, it's even, which is extraordinary.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to kind of predict what is going on with women in general, but are there any questions or anything that came out of that poll that would suggest what's behind this? Congressional candidates across the country that seem to be really kind of touching a chord with women. I mean, what would you say could explain some of that?
You know, I think it's strict pocketbook issues. If you think about it, social issues have not been the driving force in this campaign. It's been pocketbook issues. And, you know, the conventional wisdom my whole life has been that women traditionally control the kind of household finances. And
well, in the household, I mean, I think really we can say the household in general, and frankly should probably control the world. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No argument. I was raised by, no, absolutely. I was raised by women, and, you know.
But the economy is a big issue for women, I guess, and that's something that we're seeing in this poll with these results.
Yeah, that is the main thing. But, you know, to me, it's all these groups are shifting. And you mentioned yourself that in September there was a lead for the Democrats among women. So the interesting thing is then the Democrats went on a big pitch for women over the last few weeks. So this decline in their numbers coincides with their real active work.
Now, what's the significance, though? I mean, would this be kind of historic, or how unprecedented would it be if women actually went for Republicans in these congressional races?
Well, in the history of the exit polling that you network started and we kind of work with as well, the women have never overwhelmingly, as a class, voted for Republicans over Democrats. In 2002, the exit polls showed there was a tie, but those exit polls were, you know, really problematic, and so everyone agreed afterward. But so at the very least, there was a tie in 2002, but not since '82 has there been Republican victory.
Let me ask you a kind of a broader question along those lines. What does this mean? It seems like the polling numbers show that the approval rating for the president is around, what, 43%?
Yeah.
What does this say about voters' impressions of President Obama? Because there's another figure in the polling that shows they're still pretty optimistic about the next 2 years. How do you make sense of that?
That to me, I wondered if some of that isn't voters thinking, well, that Republicans are going to take a chamber of Congress or two, and now they're looking at him in a divided government sort of context, and they're kind of feeling more optimistic, you know, about how things could go. But it's a little bit baffling at the same time. I don't, you know, this poll, the public is in a really angry and unpredictable mood, which is also why, let's caveat this with saying Election Day could upend everything we think right now.
And then, of course, the enthusiasm gap remains decisively, it seems, and has been in Republicans' favor. So that's important for voter turnout.
Yeah, and the Democrats, I thought, a couple weeks ago we were hearing about a spike in their interest, and some of the early voting numbers are coming in, and Democrats have been pointing to those as sort of indications that their enthusiasm's higher. This poll wasn't finding that yet, so.
All right, Jim. Well, thanks a lot. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the next, maybe in the next few days, but certainly look forward to reading your stuff in the Times in the days and next week when you try to make sense of all these results. Thanks for joining us.
Right back at you. Thanks.
And now turning to our roundtable, Doug Heye from the RNC and Heye Sevugan. I got it wrong in the intro. Sorry about that. Well. But we're interested in accuracy here, so thanks for giving me another chance.
My name's the one that's always mispronounced, so
Doug
I really
Heye,
feel in a position of
it's
strength
not
right now. Thank you.
But hi, Doug. Thanks for joining us. You heard some of our discussion just now with Jim. Let me just start with you because I frame this as pretty unsettling for the Democrats. What's your take on this, Doug?
We think it definitely is. Yeah, I've been in about 10 or 11 states over the past 3 weeks, and everywhere I've gone, we've seen that voter dissatisfaction is at a fever pitch. They don't like what this Congress has done, what this president has done. They don't like how it's been done, meaning how it's been implemented, how bills were passed. And they're angry and they want to change. And if you want to change Washington, the quickest way to do that is to fire Nancy Pelosi and retire Harry Reid.
Now, Harry, some of the more recent pollings, as Jim mentioned, suggested there had been a spike, at least at some point, for Democrats in that kind of pivotal enthusiasm gap. But that maybe is dissipated in this most recent polling.
I think
is this unsettling, or is this just
no? I think there's recent polling.
Stuff?
No, I think there's recent polling that shows that that enthusiasm has picked up on our side. If you look at the Newsweek poll that came out this week, or even the Rasmussen poll, which has us within 3, and it's Rasmussen. Washington Post shows us picking up 7 points this past month. And if you're looking at individual races, just this morning there's a race out of, or there's a poll out of Alaska that shows that our candidate Scott McAdam is pulled ahead of Joe Miller. In California, our candidates are decisively taking the lead. But beyond the polling, we're looking at the actual votes that are coming in. And looking at early votes as an indication of enthusiasm, what we're seeing is in 11 key states, California, Illinois, Ohio, Nevada, we are ahead. And we're ahead.
Whoa, but you're ahead in terms of people voting early.
And you would think that the most enthusiastic folks would be the ones that are out there voting early. If there is a
and
real enthusiasm
think they're necessarily
gap,
voting for Democrats.
Democratic registrants are voting at a higher rate and in higher numbers in key states across the country. Now that, we can talk about polling with small sample sizes across the country, and there's a lot of volatility there, but in actual votes, Democrats are doing better. And I think what that shows is Republicans haven't closed the deal. They can't seal the deal because they're not offering the American people anything but more of the same and more obstruction.
Now, Doug, obviously some of the stuff in this poll does suggest that voters do remain optimistic about kind of the second part of the president's tenure in the White House. So there's some good news for Democrats in this poll. Let me ask you, though, about this early voting. Is that necessarily an arbiter of are these Democrats, can we be certain, are voting for the Democratic candidate? Because didn't Republicans get in some trouble a few years ago when you guys thought, oh, Republicans are turning out, and then they were turning out for Democrats?
It's also a reason never to believe exit polls. But, Hari's right in mentioning some states where Democrats are ahead. But the reality is they are ahead by a much smaller margin than they were in 2008 when enthusiasm for the Obama campaign was off the charts. You take a state like Florida, where we really got shellacked by Democrats in 2008. We're up about 130,000 Republican versus Democrat votes of early voting. You take a state like North Carolina with a lot of enthusiasm, my home state, a lot of enthusiasm with college voters, with historically black colleges and universities, really driving early voting in 2008. We're neck and neck with them right now. And Republicans and Democrats go after early votes in a different way. Democrats tend to go after their base, the most excited voters on either side, where Republicans think that we tend to think that our base is a bit more reliable, and we try and go for those voters who don't have as high a propensity as normal.
Well, when you picked up the New York Times and saw that headline, the Obama coalition seems to be fraying. I mean, what's your take on it? I mean, how'd you react to that?
I think
that has to be somewhat unsettling.
I think in the end, our base is going to come home.
But these are the coalition voters that maybe were the independents and the people in the middle.
Even within that New York Times poll, it showed that our base was doing fairly well. We're doing well with African Americans, we're doing well with Latinos, we're doing well with young voters. Other polling is showing that we're doing well across the board of our base. But let me just address very quickly something Doug said about our base versus some of these voters that wouldn't ordinarily come out in a midterm. If you look more closely at early vote numbers, just looking at the subset of these so-called sporadic voters who would ordinarily sit out a midterm, we're actually doing even better than we are overall with those voters in key states across the country. I think what that shows is that enthusiasm gap has been overstated, and that our on-the-ground operation is capturing our enthusiasm while theirs still seems to be in a state of disarray.
So are you suggesting that all the talk, I mean all the polling, all the big kind of hand-wringing or celebration, depending on where you're coming from, about how Republicans are going to make significant headway next Tuesday and take over the House is completely overstated? Do you think Democrats are going to hold on to the House? I mean, what's your bottom line?
We feel very optimistic.
You're optimistic about
encouraging signs coming out of early vote, encouraging signs from what we're seeing in the field, encouraging signs what we're seeing in the polls and individual races, whether it's in California or Alaska or Nevada or Ohio. Things are tightening. They're trending our way. We feel like that will all climax on November 2nd, and we'll do very well.
But will you hold on to the House?
We think so.
We're confident that we're going to be in a position to win. We think we're at 38 seats. We need to get to 39. But Jim's story, I think, was demonstrated last night on The Daily Show that this Obama coalition is absolutely fractured.
Well,
we had Jon Stewart, who has been a real proponent of the president's in 2008 when he was a candidate, basically last night say, dude, where are the jobs?
Well,
and that's a question the president can't answer.
Look, I think if you're looking about a base that's fractured and a party that's fractured, look at the Republican Party. You have Karl Rove saying that the Tea Party is unsophisticated and Sarah Palin doesn't have the gravitas to lead. I think the Republican Party should look within themselves. They have third-party candidates across the country.
We don't have candidates who are shooting our
right.
legislation with guns.
But
we don't have candidates who are saying that I voted against Barack Obama 2 years ago. We don't have candidates who said I don't support Nancy Pelosi and I'll vote against her.
All right, guys.
Even though their first vote as a member of
candidates
Congress
that
in
are
this
literally
cycle,
splitting
the vote.
in this
You've got
cycle
candidates
was
the
to vote
voters
for Nancy
will
Pelosi.
Launching
decide
right into
at the
Dallas.
polls on Tuesday. But one thing I think we can all agree on here, if I can shift gears for a minute, since you did bring this up, the president made an appearance on Jon Stewart's show last night, and it seems like the one thing from just reading about it, I wasn't there, but from reading about it, he got pretty good reviews. But now people are turning on Jon Stewart and saying, what's with all the softballs from our the media's darling of television? We got a clip of that, so let's listen to it, okay?
So you wouldn't say you'd run this time as a pragmatist. You would not. It wouldn't be, yes, we can, given certain conditions.
I think what I would say is, yes, we can, but it is not. But it is not going to. It's not going to happen overnight.
So, what was your take on that? I mean, is this going to be effective with young voters? You're talking about the base is going to come out. Are these appearances good for the president?
I think the president answered very tough questions, and he's willing to talk to.
Oh, so they weren't. You're not even agreeing that Jon Stewart was asking softballs.
Certainly not. No.
There's just no common ground today. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think the president answered tough questions, and he's willing to talk to folks and across the board, across the spectrum, whether it's our base or others, which is a marked difference from what you're seeing from Republicans across the board. They're running away from the press. They're not willing to answer questions. We're seeing that in Ohio with their gubernatorial candidate. We're seeing that in Nevada with their senatorial candidate. We're seeing that in Alaska, where people are handcuffing reporters.
But last night we saw the president on Jon Stewart's show. What was your impression of his appearance, and does that make any difference at all? We've got a big rally coming up. Is that going to have any kind of?
It demonstrates the political problem that the president has in trying to appeal to these voters who are naturally Obama voters. But I looked at it and was sad that the president of the United States would go on just some comedy talk show to try and yuck it up. And for Republicans, it's not an issue of going on The Daily Show or The Tonight Show or The View or doing his brackets on ESPN. It's a question of doing the brackets on ESPN and The View and The Tonight Show and The Daily Show. I mean, thank God Baywatch is canceled. Otherwise,
but there is a precedent for obviously leading politicians going on some of those late night television shows. So I mean, I do feel like maybe that train has left the station. But since we're going to stay on this for a while, let's bring in Kiki Ryan from Politico, who is kind of a special treat today because normally she joins us on Tuesday. So now back on Unplugged, I mean, of course. So you were there at the taping. What was the mood like in the room? I mean, did you have a sense that obviously the crowd was happy to see Stewart, but
yeah, they were very enthusiastic about Obama. of course, but everyone there was young. And, you know, people were talking while before waiting, wondering if it was going to be a good idea for him to do this, even though they both love, you know, Stewart and Obama. But, you know, it was great to be there because Stewart spent so much time afterwards, about a half hour, taking questions from the audience. And even Stewart admitted that that clip we just saw when he got Obama saying, yes, we can, but he said when he said that in his mind, he thought, score. He knew that was going to be the clip that people were going to be watching today because he kind of did. I don't think it was very an easy interview.
Well, we've got a highlight reel. So
okay,
yeah, let's see a few of kind of the best and brightest moments. Let's look at that.
Are we the people we were waiting for? Or
This is a nice set.
thank you very much.
Yeah, it reminds me of the convention.
We
Yeah, the same
actually
designer?
bought it. It was in a warehouse. Does that happen to you wherever you go? Is that just a wild because when you guys go to work, do people typically applaud, or it's a nice feeling?
It was a wonderful welcome. It does not happen, for example, when I go to the Republican caucus meeting.
I see.
Look, let me say this about members of Congress.
Are you going to curse?
No, I'm not going to curse. Larry Summers did a heck of a job trying to figure out how to...
You don't want to use that phrase, dude.
I was... pun intended.
All right.
All right, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the audience responded. You heard Doug say, but that still seems really inappropriate for a president to do. But we are seeing more of that from presidents. Did you have a sense from anyone last night that this was uncomfortable, or was it just one big laugh fest?
No, it was one big laugh fest. But I mean, how many people in the audience are even going to vote? You know, and on Tuesday. I mean, I think a lot of the problem is that these people that watch Daily Show don't really end up turning out to the polls.
So the young voters, kind of getting to Heye's point, I mean, the young voters may seem energized when he's been making and he's been going on these tours. He was at the University of Wisconsin and enthused, but are they going to get out of bed on Tuesday when Obama's name's not on the ballot and go vote for some congressional candidate they may not even know about?
Yeah, historically, we haven't seen them do that in midterm elections.
Let me end up on that note with you guys. I mean, is that going to be a problem, do you think, for Democrats? Or you know, you're looking to get that young vote out?
I think young voters were doubted in 2008. They turned out in record numbers. They're going to come out again in 2010. And not only do we have faith in young voters to come out in 2010 because they understand the stakes, we have a plan in place to turn these folks out. Our GOTV operation is unprecedented. We've had organizers in 50 states in all 435 congressional districts for the last, not just 6 weeks, for the last 20 months. That has never happened in the history of party politics before, and we think they're going to turn out. On November 2nd.
Doug,
That actually has happened before. We're doing the same thing. And we think young voters have a real reason, especially in this election, to vote Republican. That's why we've spent so much time on college campuses. We got a lot of voters who are young people who are going to be graduating from college, and they're scared that they're not going to be able to get a job, and I think they're right to be scared.
So
whether that's undergrad or graduate or even leaving high school.
All right, well, we're going to have to end it with that. Thank you guys both very much for joining us, and I guess we'll all know the answer to these questions in 5 days. Kiki, thank you very much for being here with us again, and we'll see you, I hope, next Tuesday, and gosh, maybe a few more days in between. Thanks a lot. And thank you. That's it for Washington Unplugged. Join us here every day at 12:30 p.m. on CBSNews.com and at 9 p.m. on election night for a special edition of Washington Unplugged. I'm Jan Crawford. Have a great day.